Hi everyone, I'm Meghna Gummi from Ark Group. Multi-Hyphenate. The definition of multi-hyphenate is a person with various professions and skills. And today I have someone with me who embodies the true meaning of multi-hyphenate. He is described as an industrialist, educationalist and a social entrepreneur. He's had a truly wonderful and geodiverse life journey. And he's a very renowned name in all the fields he's ever entered into. May it be construction, construction material, education, healthcare, hospitality, food, and many more. So today I'm extremely happy to have Mr. K.V. Vishnu Raju Garu, the chairman of Sri Vishnu Educational Society, chairman of Anjani Vishnu Holdings, and chairman of Sagar Cements, and board member of NCL Buildtek. So for people who don't know, Sri Vishnu Educational Society has institutions in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And in Telangana, it's BVRIT, and in Andhra Pradesh, it's Sri Vishnu Autonomous University. And these institutions educate almost more than 20,000 plus students. And Anjani Vishnu Holdings have subsidiary companies like Anjani Foods, Anjani Cement, Anjani Tiles, and many more. So I'm introducing to you to someone that I truly admire, and thank you so much for being here, sir, today.
Thank you, Meghna.
So it's so wonderful to have you here. I actually always had multiple conversations with you, and I really wanted everyone else also to know the different businesses and the kind of personality that you are. So that's why we have you here today. So Vishnu Raju Garu is also the grandson of the late Padma Shri B.V. Raju Garu, and he's carrying the legacy forward. So, sir, can you tell us something about your early years where you studied and how you were groomed to come to this position today?
Definitely, Meghna, and thank you for having me here. So basically, I was born in Bhimavaram. That's it. After that, I was never there. My schooling was all over the place. I studied for the first couple of years of my life in the UK because my father is a doctor. So after that I came back to India and my grandparents brought me up. So I studied in places like a small village near Trichy in Tamil Nadu, and then Ooty. I went to Cliff School, which is a feeder school to Lawrence School, Lovedale. And I did my 4th and 5th in Lawrence. And then from 6th onwards I went to Delhi. Because my grandfather shifted to Delhi. So I studied in St. Xavier's school in Delhi, and then my 10th and intermediate back to Hyderabad, and I studied in Little Flower High School and Little Flower Junior College. Subsequently, I did my engineering in those days it was called Regional Engineering College Trichy. Now it has become the NIT Trichy. So I did my BTech in Chemical Engineering. And then after that, I went to the US and did my master's in chemical engineering in a university in Michigan called Michigan Technological University. I worked for 2.5 years in the US before coming back to India. So I think this is my background education-wise.
So you've been brought up and studied in so many different geographical locations. Do you think this was a part of how the kind of exposure you got in different places is what led to how you're groomed today, or the kind of philosophy that you have today?
Definitely, Meghna. In fact, I really appreciate the diversity through which I went, because I studied in different states within the country, and then I also had the chance to go abroad. And right from my early age, I used to accompany my grandfather. So, for example, he was considered to be one of the pioneers in the cement industry. So even when I was in high school, he used to take me along to different plants, whether it was cement, paper, sugar. So that sort of made a big impact on me, and also in a sense made me sort of have an ambition to become an engineer. Unlike my father, who was a doctor, because my influence was my grandfather actually.
So that's great, sir. So now we see that you have so many different fields of your businesses and so many different fields. So how do you balance all of them? Because they're not even related to each other. They're very different fields with different kind of challenges and different kind of identification that goes into each one of them. So how do you balance it, and how do you spread your time across all of these?
So, Meghna, my influence, as I mentioned to you, I did my engineering in Trichy. and I spent a lot of time in Tamil Nadu. And one thing which I used to always observe is that the industries which are located in Tamil Nadu and run by the industrialists there, they had factories all over the place. And these were probably in the automotive sector or engineering or textiles, chemicals. So when I used to travel, let us say from Trichy to Ooty or from Trichy to Chennai, I used to keep observing all these companies, and then I used to do some research on who set up these factories, and then I realized it's all part of a big group. So that was probably something which was ingrained in my mind, and get into diverse industries. So that's why today if you see whether it is cement or ceramic tiles or printing or education or food, so maybe the seed was planted in me a long time back that I need to get into multiple things rather than saying I'll do something very big in one particular industry. So I think that subconsciously was something which I learnt. And I also think that if you do multiple things and if you have the right team, it keeps your brain also very sharp.
Yeah.
Also, what I've seen, Meghna, is that something which you learn in one sector, you can actually apply that in another sector also. So you bring a totally new way of thinking in a particular industry. And how do I find time? I think I've been fortunate to have a fantastic team. So the way we manage is not, we don't micromanage. And I think that today's major challenge in any industry is the people. And I'm very happy that whether it's in our education sector or the industries, very low turnover rate or very low attrition, even at the senior level or mid level. So I think people make all the difference, and I've been very fortunate to have the best people with me. And then I think that's how we're running the various sectors.
So it's a team-driven, employee-driven company and not a owner-driven company. So everyone has their own accountability and responsibility towards each one of them.
Exactly.
So would you say in all these businesses, is there one business that's like very close to your heart, or is like something that your little favorite business in all of these?
I think all businesses have taught me a lot of things, and I think obviously my first venture as an entrepreneur was turning around a 6 cement factory. So I took over a 6 cement plant in Nalgonda district, and this was a plant which no one had taken it up. It was lying idle for almost 7 years before I went and took it. Oh. So a lot of people said this guy is crazy, these are the deficiencies in this plant, it will not run. But what I learned right from my early days accompanying my grandfather was I knew a lot about the cement industry, and then I saw this plant and I looked at the advantages vis-a-vis the disadvantages. And then I took that decision of going ahead and then taking it over. And we struggled quite a lot of problems were there. But then 15 years after we took over, it became one of the best cement companies, a very low cost producer of cement, profitable, dividend paying. And after we created value, and when I decided I'm not going to focus on the cement sector, because cement today you must be seeing you need to have multiple locations, because it's become a logistics industry. And I was busy with the other industries and more importantly in the education side. And that's when we exited, and this company which no one was looking at for 7-8 years, and it was a mini cement plant. And then after we took over, we expanded it almost 8 times, created a nice profitable cement company, and then it was acquired by Chettinad Cements in 2014. So I think that was something which, because that was my first, as an entrepreneur, that was my first exposure. That has given a lot of satisfaction. But having said that, I think what is very dear to me today is the education side, because it's not an industry, but then you make an impact on a lot of people, especially the students. So I always believe that a teacher or a doctor, these are the two professions who can actually touch someone's lives.
Yeah.
And it's been now 22, 23 years since I'm in the education sector, and different parts of India and different parts of the world, when you travel, you come across your alumni, and then you feel very happy, okay, that you're also a part of their life journey. So maybe education is something which is quite close and dear to me. But the most interesting maybe industry which I was involved was Anjani Cements, because it was originally called Shez Cements, and then we took it over and it had a listing. So I learned a lot of things in finance, because I'm not a finance man. I learned marketing, setting up the marketing, and then trying to make it a very, very, efficient producer, because cement industry is highly competitive in this country. So I think that would be something which I really cherish.
So, sir, like you said, education, you said, is very close to your heart, and I've seen your university in Bhimavaram, and it's absolutely wonderful. So I studied in Manipal, so I know how a small town university looks like, and usually we haven't seen something like that in Hyderabad. So when I first came to your university, I was like very, very impressed and happy that there was such a good university in Bhimavaram. And even a few of my friends studied in BVRIT and are in the US currently. And my brother-in-law actually studied in BVRIT. And all of them are actually very proud to be a part of that college. And that comes very less. You see very few people who are happy to be alumni of a particular college. So it's actually a wonderful thing to see. So talking about cement, which you've been a part for a very long time. So we wanted to dive a little deeper into the cement industry, because that's something that is not very known to everyone, or what goes on behind the scenes. Everyone knows that cement is, actually today cement is almost like a commodity. Without cement, you can't do anything. So you want to build a building or your tiles, whatever is required. Cement is not anymore a product which is a luxury or a premium thing. It's become a commodity in our industry, in our lives nowadays. So we'll just talk more about that aspect of it and try to see what are the different factors that affect the cement. So what do you think are the key factors that affect or form a or change the industry on a day-to-day basis?
So cement, as you said, Meghna, is definitely a commodity business, and India is the second largest producer of cement in the world. Now, having said that, if you look at our installed capacity of cement in India, it's about 600 million tons. The consumption is probably, I don't have the figures of 2024, but if you look at 2023 figures, it's close to 400 million tons. So that means the installed capacity is 600 million. Your consumption is about 400 million. Per capita consumption of cement, we are extremely low. We are at about 250 to 270 kgs per person. The world average is double that. It's about 520 to 550. And if you look at a country like China, it's about 1800 kgs. Oh. So now you get a sense of where we are. Yeah. But having said that, China is obviously the largest producer of cement in the world. But if you look at the consumption of cement for the past 10 years, 2014 to 2024, the curve or the graph for China is pretty much flat, or there's maybe a small decline. For example, in 2014, the consumption of cement in China was about 2.4 billion tons. Then it was steady there, between 214 to 240 in that range. And last year's data also shows it's about 220 or something. Now, India is a much smaller market in terms of cement consumption, but if you look at 2014 to 2024-23, these 10 years, 2014 probably we were at about 240 million tons consumption, and that figure is now slowly gone up to 400 million. So the curve, the graph is steadily increasing here. So which speaks volumes about the potential of our country, because infrastructure wise and all, still we have a long way to go. And cement obviously depends on the raw material, which is limestone. And so you need to set up a cement factory as close to the limestone deposit as possible. So that's why it's again very dependent regionally, wherever limestone deposits are. Yeah. Okay. So typically other industries, you put it closer to the market. Here you put it at the limestone deposit, because the ratio of limestone to cement is 1.5 to 1. So for every ton of cement you produce, you need to mine 1.5 tons of limestone. So the transportation is something which you'll have to be very careful. And but I think the cement industry has a bright future in this country, because infrastructure wise we are still not there,
Yeah.
even when compared to other countries. So I think cement has a great future.
So when we're looking at so much consumption and increasing consumption over the years and around the world and in India, so is there more requirement for eco-friendly or sustainable products, cement products, or is this consumption having a lot of impact on the environment?
100% Meghna, because cement is one of the greatest contributors to the greenhouse gases. It's a very highly polluting industry, and basically cement is calcined limestone, and then you add gypsum and you grind it, it becomes cement. So what you emit when you calcine limestone is carbon dioxide. So you see all these big stacks of the chimneys. So what the industry is doing is trying to minimize that. So one way they're doing it is through going for more blended cements. And that is, you can add fly ash, you can add slag, which is a waste product from a steel industry, and you get carbon credits also for that. The second thing is the absolute power consumption per ton of cement. I remember when I was starting my career in the cement industry, 100 units per ton of cement was a norm. So if your cement plant was consuming 100 units of power per ton of cement produced, you were considered to be an efficient cement producer. Today people are talking about 70 units. All the efficient plants have come to below 80 now.
No.
And technology also has changed in the cement industry, where if you've seen a cement factory, the tallest structure is something called a preheater. So 20 years back, it was a 4-stage preheater. Then it became a 5-stage preheater. Now people are installing 6-stage preheaters. So when you do that, the coal consumption, because there are two major things. One is electricity for running your motors and things like that. And second is your actual fuel, because you need to calcine that limestone to make a product called clinker. And you do that at a very, very high temperature. So obviously coal is what is available in India. We don't use any other fuel here. Maybe lignite or maybe pet coke. These are the three fuels which are being used in India. Whereas you go to the Middle East, people use gas, because we don't have that amount of gas here for these kilns.
Yeah.
So now it's become mandatory also for the companies to, in their balance sheets or annual reports, to talk about the environment. So another area is when you mine the limestone, you also have to again set right the mining lands after you finish mining the limestone, because you're basically degrading that area.
So taking responsibility for...
Yes, so you'll have to do plantation again, make it into water bodies and things like that. And here I'd like to quote the example of one of the most beautiful gardens in the world in a province of Victoria in British Columbia in Canada. It's called the Butchart Gardens. Very, very popular garden, attracting millions of visitors every year. It was actually an abandoned cement factory limestone mine.
Oh.
So when you go 3-4 benches deep into the earth and you finish mining the limestone, you are supposed to again fill it back with soil, again put trees. So they have done a fantastic job there. In India, no one has done that so far. We definitely plant trees and all that. But I think going forward, you'll see many, many initiatives like that. So mining, your fuel, which is coal, and then electricity, and then water. But nowadays water also is being recycled. Yeah. So definitely there's a lot of scope for further improvement. And they're also talking about carbon dioxide capture technology nowadays.
Okay.
All the carbon dioxide which is going up, a lot of research is being done on how do you capture that. But there are industrial uses for carbon dioxide also.
So with this, do you think people are also expecting more eco-friendly products? Like, is the demand increased drastically over the years, saying I would only work with someone who's, supporting or doing something good back to the environment? Or is it still slow?
I think it's still very slow because awareness is still not there, at least in India. Even though if you look at most of the companies, at least in the listed companies in the cement sector, they do write a lot about their initiatives.
Yeah.
But the common man probably is not looking at that.
So, in general, for a layman to understand how to assess a cement, like there's so many people who build a independent house for themselves, or use cement in some form or the other in their household. So, how can one assess saying, okay, which is the good one, which is not? Other than the brand, are there any factors or like physical things that people can check to see if the cement is of good quality?
So the first and foremost thing, Meghna, is that cement, there is a BIS standard for cement. And obviously, unless that BIS standard is matched, you cannot dispatch cement also. Yeah. And as far as my understanding is concerned, almost all cements match that. Now, what type of cement you need to use, it also depends on the application. And you would have seen a lot of advertisements of cement companies saying 53 grade and that grade, this grade. Basically, cement is of two types, according to me, for a common man, other than your specialty cements. So one is the ordinary Portland cement, and the second is blended cements. So ordinary Portland cement is, as I mentioned to you earlier, the most important product you make when you manufacture cement is something called clinker. And that clinker you add gypsum, and gypsum is added basically to slow down the setting time of cement. If you don't add gypsum, and when you add water to cement, ground clinker, it will immediately set. And when you do an application, whether it's a slab or a pillar or a column, you need time for workability. So basically, it slows down the setting time, gypsum. So if it is clinker and gypsum, it is called ordinary Portland cement. But if you substitute a portion of clinker with an additive, it can be fly ash, then it's called Portland pozzolana cement. And if you substitute clinker with slag, which is a byproduct from a steel plant, it's called Portland slag cement. And there are different ISI tests for these three categories. Now, these are the three cements which are used for a person who's building a house or something. But if suppose you're building a runway for the airport, you need quick setting cements, or you're doing an oil well drilling. So you have something called an oil well cement. There are different standards for that. But that is something which a common man who's building a house doesn't look into. So I think you need to look into your application in your house. So for example, for a slab, what type of cement you need? For plastering, what type of cement you need? And then you can take a call on that. But I think Indian cement industry is probably on par or better than anything in the world because it's a very mature industry. Adequate quality measures are being taken. And we are probably, our standards are on par or better than most of the countries. So I don't see any problem as far as cement quality is concerned. It's the application you need to do. And make sure that you buy cement and you check the bag which is not being tampered. Because there have been instances where people have actually started adulterating cement to make money. Some of the smaller towns and villages, we have seen that. So that is something which needs to be checked up. Probably one thing which people can do is if they're building a house and if they have decided to buy a particular brand of cement, get that cement tested in the nearest lab, certified lab. And there are certain tests which are don't cost much. One is the initial setting time, the final setting time. There's something called a slump test, and there's something called a Vicat apparatus which they use. And also basically it's setting and strength. These are the two things you need to do.
That we need to consider to ensure that the product is...
So that at least for your satisfaction, you know that the cement is coming to those standards.
So cement industry is a very volatile industry. Like why do the prices waver so much? Like it doesn't change once or twice a year. It changes quite a few times. And why do you think that happens?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that it's a commodity. I think it's a true commodity, and most of the commodities keep fluctuating. And as I mentioned, in India, 600 million tons roundabout is the installed capacity. The consumption, I don't have the latest figures, but probably it's around about 400 million. So that means there is a huge overcapacity. And again, if you look at the regional spread of cement, it is not uniform throughout the country. So, and also there is spurts of huge requirement, and there are certain cases where there is no demand for cement. For example, cement is linked to availability of sand. Without sand, you can't use cement. So if a particular state has a different policy for sand, or for 2 months you have huge flooding and rains taking place, obviously sand cannot be mined and you cannot use cement.
Yeah.
So the usage also is quite volatile. And then you have these demand supply issues. Third factor, I think, which is the most important, is the industry is highly fragmented in this country. Most of the other countries, at least the big countries, you have hardly a handful of players. So when you have a handful of players, there is a pricing discipline.
Yeah.
When you have so many players in this country and some players very strong in one particular region, it's very difficult to control the prices.
So
and that's why this volatility is there.
So would there be any given point of time where the government will intervene and like put a standard price, or like only 10% beyond this is what you can sell? Or do you think that intervention could ever happen?
Government doesn't get into these things because same thing if you look at any other commodity like sugar, your paper, fluctuations are there.
Yeah.
What government does is there's something called earlier it was called the MRTP, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Now they call it the Competition Commission of India. Their role basically is to see that people in any particular industry don't form a cartel. That is the role which government plays, and government is playing a good role in that. So as far as that is where the role of the government has got no role in deciding the prices of a commodity. So I think that is where the government comes into the picture.
But then, is there any given point of time that the fluctuation reduces, or we can hope to have a more like the difference between when the demand is high and when the demand is low is quite high?
Yes.
So to keep that balanced, is there anything that we can expect or to see that in the future we can be like, okay, it will only increase this much, or let's not wait for 3 more months, or let's not wait for the rains to end, or let's wait for different factors that affect these prices? You think any time that we can expect that will change a little bit?
No, I think this volatility will continue, Meghna, for some time, and it's not only peculiar to India. It is all over the world. It's like this. And added to that, there are other factors. See, you had also mentioned that cement has become a very common product. Yeah. So obviously, a common man also uses it.
Yeah.
But you'll be surprised that the GST on cement is 28%.
Yeah. That's very high.
Which is normally used for luxury products. Cement is not a luxury product.
Yeah.
Now, why is it that cement, the GST is so high? Because my understanding is it's probably the second or the third highest contributor to the tax for the government. Probably first is on liquor or cigarettes, whatever that category is, and then cement. So the industry has been asking for a rational duty, because most of the other building materials are 18%.
Yeah.
But cement, it is 28%. So there's something which no one can control. Cement is also an industry, as I mentioned, not only power and fuel dependent, but also transportation dependent. Because end of the day, it is still a very, very low price commodity. So I don't know, today maybe the Hyderabad price is 350 rupees a bag.
Yeah.
But if you divide that 350 by 50 kgs, it is 7 rupees a kg. And if you look at the transportation, it actually is a huge component. And probably, I always keep telling this, that it's probably the cheapest powder in India.
Yeah.
You can compare that with sugar, you can compare that with salt. Still, cement is still cheap. And if you look at that cost of production of cement, or even the selling price of cement, a large component that is GST, a large component is power, a large component is fuel. So these are things which are very difficult to control. And this sporadic increase, decrease in the consumptions leads to this type of volatility in the market.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And so in now we've recently heard that the Adani Group has taken over Ambuja and ACC. Due to that, can we see any sort of change, or you think it will affect the market, the cement industry by any means?
So as I mentioned, consolidation is going to increase in this country because there are too many players. And already this has taken place in the West. If you go to a country like US, there are probably only 6 to 8 groups which are having those factories there. Earlier it was also like India. where we have a lot of smaller players. US also was like that, but over a period of time they've consolidated. Europe, the same situation. Going forward, I think that's what's going to happen here, and you'll see many more of these mergers taking place. And probably if you have less number of players or less number of groups, the point which you mentioned, can we expect some kind of a stability, I think will also come.
So it's a good thing that the consolidation is happening.
It's a good thing for the industry and for the consumer.
Okay. So is there anything else that in general, like, people should know about cement, or what goes behind the scenes to actually produce this and ensure the quality of it is maintained? So
as I mentioned, quality of cement, we need not worry much, because the industry is very mature. We have the best of technologies and we have the best of people making it. And more or less throughout India, you have access to the best quality limestone. Where I think people should be careful is when they use cement, because it's very difficult for you to see at the site what is a mix of cement, aggregate, sand, water, how people are doing that, because many cases it's not scientifically done. There's no one measuring it. Probably if you buy ready-mix concrete, you get the certificate and you can get it tested. I think that is where the caution should be taken by the end user, because what's the type of concrete they're using, whether it's M20 or M30 or whatever it is, and is it being done in the right proportions, and is sufficient curing being done, or if the quality is where it has to be done. Because what happens if there is any problem, suppose a crack develops, or let us say that there's some other issue, the first blame goes on the cement factory, because it's an organized company. You can go. You're not going to blame the sand. You're not going to blame the metal. You're not going to blame the person, the maestri there. The procedure was done. So it's always a product that is blamed first. Exactly. So I think it's very important for the homeowner or whoever is using it to make sure, because you can get a fantastic cement, but if it is not properly mixed, or if you don't have the right proportion of the components, then it may not do the job which you expect that to do. I think that is the caution which I would suggest. And there's so many new innovations in this industry also that we're seeing. So by adding additives, it's only increasing the quality of cement, but not reducing the quality of it. Right. I think that's something that a lot of times people don't understand. They think that you're adding additives to, reduce your cost of cement, or... you're talking about blended cements? Yeah. Yes. In fact, blended cements, I am a big supporter of blended cements. The reason being, as a chemical engineer, I'll tell you something. When you mix cement with water, it's an exothermic reaction. So heat is generated. And in ordinary Portland cement, and today I think the norm is either 43 grade or 53 grade. So basically the 53 grade is, the cement is much finer. You grind it to a much finer consistency, and there's something called blane. So the blane numbers are higher there. Now, more finer the cement is, when you add water, it's an exothermic reaction. There's more heat generated. So how does that heat come out? It comes out in the form of a micro crack. Yeah. In a blended cement, the heat of hydration is much lower. Okay, so only thing is sometimes the blended cement takes little bit more time to set. But today we want the cement to be set as quickly as possible so that we go to the next floor. So that's why people are using the OPC. But in my opinion, I would definitely recommend a blended cement, because in the long run it's much better. You don't get those cracks, and it's much more environmentally friendly. Yeah. Okay, but there's a customer perception. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the blended cements also reduce the heat, the absorption of heat with the different kind of compositions? Yeah, so as I mentioned, the exothermic reaction, there's something called the heat of hydration. It's much lower in a blended cement. And it's not that India is not using it. Many states, for example, you go to Orissa today, the percentage of blended cement is much higher than the OPC there. I think even the government departments, probably also, if they can promote blended cements, it'd be much better, because if you see most of the contracts, they talk about 43 grade cement should be used. Yeah. So if they can also recommend blended cements, it will definitely be much more useful. We will be saving the environment to some extent. Yeah. So it's basically the awareness that people don't know, and that's why they think by any given point, right? Like it's like adding water to milk and making it thinner.
They think it's the same kind of thing
Right,
that we're
right.
doing, where we're adding additive to make it
Right.
cheaper for the person, but actually it's better for the end
Yeah.
user.
And the other thing, it is once upon a time it was much cheaper to make, but today it is not cheaper because the cost of fly ash, the cost of slag has
Is
also
high,
increased quite a
yeah.
lot. So, and you're not getting that premium there. So for the cement factory, it doesn't make much more of an economic sense to go for a blended cement, which was the case 10 years back.
Yeah. So, sir, next I would like to talk about a little bit about the tiles industry as well, because Anjani Tiles has a manufacturing units in different locations, and you're supplying to different states in the entire country. So, just wanted to talk a little bit about the tile industry as well, which is related to the cement industry as well. Today, the tile industry is huge. There's so many players in this industry. So, to an end user, or generally, how do we look at the quality of tiles?
So basically, traditionally in India, we used to use the natural stone. It can be marble, it can be granite, it can be our tandoor stone, kadapa stone. So plenty of natural stones were available. Or earlier, we used to also have mosaic. But from the mid 80s, that's when the first ceramic tile unit started being set up in this country. And today, if you look at the usage of flooring material or wall material, I think the tile industry, the total number of tiles being consumed in this country is more than the natural stone.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why is it so, and what are the reasons for that? So, if you look at the tile industry, let's broadly call it ceramic. There are two major classifications. One is a fully vitrified tile, and there again you have double charge, you have a GVT, you have full body. Different things are there, but that's all basically vitrified, fully vitrified. And then you have the ceramic body, which is also fired in a kiln, but then the water absorption is different when compared to vitrified body. Say in the vitrified tile, the water absorption is maybe below 0.05%. Here it can be ranging from 5 to 8%, 10% also. So that's the only difference. And there again, there is a nice ISI or a BIS standard for that, and we are on par to any tile industry abroad. One, ease of application of a tile. Okay, and then now with the advent of digital printing technology, you can actually replicate an Italian marble or a Makrana marble or a what do you call it, Black Galaxy granite. You can replicate the whole thing at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. Because like sometimes you look at something and from far and I'm like, it is stone or a marble, and when you go close is when you realize it's a tile. That's
exactly
how good the replication of natural stone versus tile has become.
So with these factors, I think the usage of tile has become very, very high in this country.
So, how does one check the quality of tile? Like, we know that there are different kind of vitrified. There's the double charge, there's a full body, there's a GVT. So, it's to a person who's just went to a store to buy a tile. These are too many things. Like, you can't understand which is the best fit for you. Definitely, obviously, an area with water is different versus a normal area. But how can one say that, okay, fine, this is the right tile for me, or this is a tile that I need? The difference between these are what's required for me today.
So basically, the customer who decides to go for a tile has to do a little bit of homework. Now, there are certain applications where you should go for a vitrified tile, and there are certain applications where you don't have to go for a vitrified tile. And it all boils down to the individual choice. The size of the tile, for example. Not all people can go for a slab, the huge 8x4s, because the room sizes are very small.
Yeah.
And so again, if you have a standard room, your choice is whether you want to go for a 2x4 tile or a 2x2 tile. So there are people who prefer that. There are people who prefer this. And again, my understanding of the tile market is majority of the tile manufacturers, they follow or they are beyond the BIS standards. Again, in the tile industry, unlike the cement industry, the difference is there's an organized sector and an unorganized sector. The unorganized sectors don't spend on brand building, and they are all located in Gujarat in a place called Morbi. It's probably the second largest cluster of ceramic industry in the world after China. and most of that is exported. So obviously they're also maintaining the standards, otherwise they can't export. So quality, there are no issues. What we are seeing in the cement industry, the tile industry again, is the way it is being applied. Now, if you see in India, many people don't use spacers when they lay the tiles, because again, just like blended cements, they have an aversion that I don't want a gap. I don't want a gap between my tiles because dust will go there. That's what people think. But then you go to any country in the world today, they recommend using a tile spacer, because you need to have that gap mainly for two reasons. One is to allow the contraction and expansion for extreme weathers. Second is that even if your floor is not uniformly prepared, this spacer will take care of that. Okay? And in India, we are seeing in the last few years, the usage of spacers has gone up quite a lot. There's obviously a cost to that. You need to put the spacer, you need to have tile grouting, you need to have sometimes adhesives, all those things you need to do. Earlier, they were not doing that. They were just using a cement slurry and finishing it off. So you need to have, especially for the wall tiles, you need to have something with a good adhesion. You need to have waterproofing compounds if you're in a kitchen or if you're in a bathroom. That is where I'm seeing a lot of people not spending time to look at it. And there is something which I heard in this country called a paper joint.
Paper joint,
So this you don't find in other countries. It's
without a spacer, just it looks like one piece.
So they like it like that. But
it
then
looks nice.
It looks nice. But today, if you see people, at least in the big cities, are using not only the spacers but levelers also. So that if there's any, because if you look at a tile, a 2x4 or a slab, there is a BIS standard for the planarity. Okay, that means the four corners of a tile, within a certain tolerance, you should have a number. Beyond that, that means a tile is bent. So you need to check that. There are methods to check that. But even if you are within that ISI or BIS bend limits, if the ground is not prepared properly, you can see a little bit of unevenness in the surface. So the right grouting compound, the right spacer and the leveler will set right all these issues.
And when you walk also, I think you can hear the hollowness and the sound when...
So again, if it is not laid properly, the tile company is blamed.
The quality of tile is... So at Anjani Tiles, what do you do to take care of the quality of the tile and to ensure that the best product is supplied to the end user?
Right. So as you're aware, we are still building up the brand. We don't have the brand image of the top players, nor are we like a Gujarat company coming from Morbi. So the reason why we started this brand is, if you look at South India, these 5 southern states, there is no big player who's headquartered in the south and who actually is looking at south as a market. All the big names in the ceramic industry are either headquartered in Delhi or Mumbai or Ahmedabad. They're all from the north. Second is, since both our factories are in the south, we have a logistics advantage to supply to the southern markets. And the southern markets are contributing to almost 40% of the tile consumption in this country. Okay, so we have to be extremely careful as far as how do we compete with the other established brands. So the decision we have taken is, if you look at the GVT tile, for example, we want to be better than what the BIS tells us. And there are tests for that. So there are people who are using, if they're using a large quantity of tiles, they get this tile tested. There are tests for, of course, you can obviously weigh the tile. You can get a water absorption test done. You can get a planarity test done. And there are small equipments where you can even see the glossiness index of your tile. Is your tile as glossy as what, say, a competitor is? So we are very clear we want to focus on the technical aspects to see that, okay, we are on par or maybe better than the competition. Okay. So that is where we think that if we can get into the minds of a customer and who once uses our product will again come back to use a product, then I think we are successful there.
So, like, sir, you mentioned that Morbi is the biggest in India, the industry for the tiles. You think there's accessibility for someone to go to Morbi and like pick up tiles and come? Is it worth it? Like, because generally you something that is, if I go to a showroom in Hyderabad and they tell me the tile is 50 rupees. If I go to Morbi, they say it's 35 rupees or 40 rupees. But is there a reason behind why it's cheaper there because of the volume of it, or are there any other factors, or is it should we consider even going there or trying to find someone local to do it?
So I think, Meghna, it's a very good question, because all over the country, if you take Morbi tiles still are dominating in terms of volumes, and it's again on the price. They give it at a very low price. So if you ask any dealer in the south or any part of the country, why are they buying from Morbi, is on the price issue. But there are certain other disadvantages. See, for example, if a dealer has to get a consignment of tiles from Morbi, it takes him almost 15 to 20 days to get that truck. Second, the truck has to be minimum 35 to 45 tons. So the transportation to anywhere in south, he has to shell out soon as a truck comes there, maybe from 1.5 lakhs to more than 2 lakhs. Payment has to be made to even unload the material. That's a charge. Then he has to maintain this 40 tons of inventory with him.
Yeah.
Despite all that, if he's able to sell it at a low price, so what's happening there? So again, it's looking at, if you go to Morbi, you'll get a feel of what's happening there. There are, in one location, there are about 600 to 700 factories.
Yeah.
And they operate under very, very difficult, different conditions. You take fuel itself. Many of them earlier used to use a single stage gasifier, which is not allowed in South India, because you're polluting the environment if you use. But I think 3-4 years back, they put a ban on single stage gasifiers. So they've all converted to gas, because now gas is available. It again depends on whether they're doing full billing or not. Okay. Obviously, we want everyone to do full billing, but then the GST is paid. So there are certain issues there. And that's how they're able to give it at that low cost. But what we are seeing in the market is that the customer, if he's convinced of the quality, he's not willing to look at Morbi, because you look at all these big organized players. Of course, they have spent a lot of money on brand building, so that awareness is there. Yeah. I think the single biggest thing is, if a customer buys those tiles and says there is some issue, he can at least go and talk to the company.
Yeah.
But if he's getting it from Morbi, whom does he go and talk to?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the first thing. Second, I think brand plays a very, very big role in selection of a tile. If you look at all these top organized sector people, they all have their own manufacturing units also. But what the customer doesn't know is that they all also outsource from Morbi.
Absolutely.
And the brand is where the third party manufacturer. Yeah. So this, I feel 90-95% of the consumers don't even know about it, because if you look at a box of tiles, it will have a big brand name.
Yeah.
And obviously all these people are promoting through big film stars and celebrities. Okay, you can't miss it. But if you look at the finer print, you will see it is manufactured in some small plant in Morbi. Now tell me how many people look at that. Okay. So obviously these big companies also look at quality and send it here. But this is something I think the companies, the consumer also should be aware of.
But how important is brands? Like it's an open, like we've just discussed. We know that the big brands are also just taking it from a third party. Yes, they have their quality measures that they're taking care of. But at the same time, how important is it to have how much percentage of brand is important when you're selecting a particular tile? Like, is it 50% that marks go to the brand? Should I just be like, okay, fine, this is produced by this very good company, should I just go for it blindly?
It's a very good question, Meghna. And see, it's again, this is all consumer psychology. The power of brand building, the power of advertisement. If you ask me, I would not give much importance to the branding. I think you should go for a reasonable price, and then you should test the quality. Yeah. And obviously, again, it's the design which appeals to an individual consumer. What appeals to you may not appeal to me. Okay. And in the tile industry, what we have seen is, unlike cement, each company has got hundreds of different designs. So suppose I particularly, let's say I'm doing a bathroom and I go for a series of tiles. I need a highlighter, I need a lighter, I need a darker. Yeah. The top branded company may not have that. Because even in this industry, we have seen some smaller companies being much more innovative in their designs. I would definitely go for a smaller company if that is what I like, provided that quality is assured to me. And obviously I'm saving on the price also. So why should I pay for a brand? But since I know the industry, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
But most of the consumers are not looking at that. They look at that brand and they think that brand automatically assures quality. But I would definitely recommend go for the design, because you're building it permanently in your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even if a smaller company offers you a much better design, a much better glossiness, I think we should go for that.
So I'm going to touch a little bit of a controversial topic. I've heard that when you're getting it from manufacturers that you don't know very well, or from Morbi or wherever, that they do reduce in quality, and that we can understand that by just weighing the tile also. So are they doing it because, is it true, first of all, is it happening where to just meet ends meet, because it's a very competitive market, to ensure your product goes out there trying to get a lower price and taking the order, and to ensure that whatever you're charging for it works out for you also. Are they reducing the quality in the tile? And if that is there, in general, how do we know that that's actually happening or not?
So reducing the weight may not translate into reducing the quality, because if you look at the Bureau of Indian Standards specifications, they are more talking about the water absorption and the planarity. Now, what happens is the manufacturers, when you buy a box of tiles, whether it's wall tile or a vitrified tile, they make a mention, okay, it is so many kgs. Many times when we have checked up, it is not matching that weight. Yeah. Okay, may not be as per BIS, because BIS, as far as my understanding is concerned, they don't talk about weight. It's a consumer, it's a manufacturer who says this is my weight. And we have checked up and seen many times it's not matching that weight. Consumer obviously doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, 100% you are right. One way to reduce the cost of production to make it more viable is obviously to reduce the weight, because when you're saving on the body, you're saving on fuel, because the same kiln which is taking these tiles, if you reduce the density, you can push more tiles out. Okay, so this is something which companies are doing, and they reduce the weight. Now, many times what happens is if your tile goes below a certain weight and thickness, even in the transportation you get damage, breakages take place. So yes, companies are doing that. So in our company, what we're doing is we are only selling from our factories. And I know if I also outsource from Morbi, definitely my cost will be much cheaper than my own plant. Yeah. But I don't want to do that, because we are looking at it in the long run to establish a brand, because we feel that there is space available in South India. Because if you look at the tile industry, Meghna, you may not be aware that the first tile company in India was started in Tirupati, called Spartek. Oh. When I was in my second year of engineering. Before that, there was no tile company as such made through Italian machinery. Then in Yanam we had Regency. Unfortunately, both those companies are closed. Yeah. And then Karnataka, there is one company called Murdeshwar, which is branded under Naveen brand. Naveen is still there. But then all the brands you see, the so-called big brands which are advertised by these film stars or big celebrities, are all in the north. Yeah. And who actually came after Spartek and after Regency. Okay. But in south, catering to these markets, because dealer also is a very important component when you buy tiles, because an individual house owner directly can't, like a builder, he can't buy from the factory. He has to depend on the dealer. So if you can send to the dealer very quickly, if you can get to the market quickly, the dealer is happy. Second, if it's from our own factory, there's someone who's accountable tomorrow if there's any issue. If you're buying from Morbi, because what I was told, you buy it through an agent. Yeah. So tomorrow the agent may not be there. So I would definitely recommend to the buyers, look at a company where organized or whatever it is, because then there's someone accountable there if there's any issue. The other interesting thing what I've seen, Meghna, is this I saw 30 years back in the cement industry, which is no longer prevalent. Who's a decision maker to buy a particular cement? 30 years back, it was the guy who was actually the mason. Yeah. The mason, especially in the smaller towns and villages, the mason tells the house owner that don't buy that cement, it's very good. Even if a solid cement is very well advertised cement is bought by the owner and the mason is not part of it, he will say setting is slow or something like that. So the mason has to be also involved in it.
Yeah.
We are seeing that trend now in the tile industry in the smaller towns and villages, where the mason has become, a tile layer has become a very influential character.
Oh, I mean, they are the ones who know it in and out and work on it on a daily basis. So I think they have to be the ambassadors of the brand. So so now we're seeing that the tiles are replacing the stone and marble. So you think it's a good thing that we're using less of natural resources and depending more on manufactured?
Yeah. So basically, if you look at a tile also, it's a natural resource. Yeah. See, granite and marble is directly mined. You take that rock or stone and then you do the cutting and polishing. What is a ceramic tile? Again, it's again the same stone. You have feldspar, you have quartz, you have different clays. Even that is mined. Yeah. The difference is you're using energy to fire it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the case of a granite and marble, you don't use energy to, there's no firing there. So that is the additional environmental damage you're doing, because either you're using gas or you're using LPG, whatever types of gas, or you're using coal in a gasifier. But now the industry is all shifting towards gas, which is an environmentally cleaner fuel. And even technically also, if you have seen many times in marble, staining takes place, even if ink falls. Whereas in tiles, you don't have that issue. I think going forward, tile is going to really pick up. And also if you look at the tile consumption, because again I get into some statistics, India, the consumption per capita is, I think, 0.7 square meters per person. The world average is about 1.8 or 2. Oh. So we still have a long way to go.
So it's better to use. So what would be the difference between a stone and a tile, other than the thickness and maybe the fact that if you hit it, a tile will break and a stone might not break that easily. Other than that, is there any other difference that we can clearly be like, okay, this is different and that's why I should use stone or that's why I should use tile?
See, today to apply, let us say, a tile, it's very easy. Yeah. You can get an entire floor done in maybe in a day. You can finish it off. But you can't do that in marble and granite, because you need a lot of skill there. You need to cut it to your specification, you need to lay it, you need to polish it. It takes a lot of time. Also, availability of skilled labor is coming down. And then all this adds up to the cost. Yeah. So ultimately, cost tile is much more economical than going for a natural stone like a marble or a granite.
So, sir, other than quality and other factors in the tile industry, would you say that logistics is the biggest, one of the biggest in the tile and cement industry that will affect the price?
Logistics in cement is very, very important, because a truckload of cement vis-a-vis a truckload of tiles. Yeah. Tile is probably 4 to 5 times more value. Yeah. So cement, it's a very, very big component. I would say 18 to 20% of the cement expenditure, if you look at any balance sheet of a cement company, it ranges from 18 to 23% is the money they're spending on freight forward. But if you look at the tile industry, it probably would be less than 7% or 8%. So you get an indication of,
So in both these industries, do you think recycling them, there's a certain amount of wastage, whether you're laying a tile or when you're using the cement? With this wastage, you think, is there any scope for recycling it and using it as a different element or different part for the construction?
Cement, absolutely. In the process of making cement, there is no wastage. When you go to a cement factory, you don't find any wastage.
In application,
Application, also, when you apply for a new house, I don't think any cement is wasted. Other than what you keep outside, sand, aggregate and all, there will be some natural loss if you keep it on the road. But if you're demolishing something which is a concrete material, today there are applications for that. Okay, and a lot of people are working on different technologies to use more of building waste. Now, tile, what happens is in the process of manufacturing tiles, once you fire the tile with the glaze, with the different inks and all that, and there is a quality problem, you obviously reject it in the factory. Then you have those broken tiles. There are a lot of applications for broken tiles. If you have an artistic mindset, we have seen people actually using broken tiles and making a nice patterns and all that. That is one thing. But in the process itself, nowadays companies are using 2 to 3% of their broken tiles again back in the grinding process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can grind it and then reuse it for the next batch of things. Great. So, I mean, I think I've learned a lot about these industries, and there's a lot more to learn from you. But these industries, particularly, I think we've gotten a good idea about. So, being a serial entrepreneur in different fields of work, what would you say are the challenges, or how do you mitigate risk for someone who wants to start a business?
So I think first of all, a person who wants to become an entrepreneur or start a business, the mindset should be that he should be prepared for failure. Because not everything goes as per our plans. So you need to have that mental strength first. Second is you need to have a very, very positive mindset. A lot of speed breakers will be there, a lot of hurdles will be there, a lot of people will discourage you. But if you believe in that, you should go ahead. Okay. Also, I think we cannot be an expert. As I mentioned to you, we are running different businesses, and probably we are not experts in any of these. But some basic fundamentals we should have before we start any business. They call it a back of the envelope calculation. So you need to do that. And then I think just like how we get a checkup of our health once a year, once in a while we need to assess the health of our business also. Because sometimes what happens, people look at one sector in that business and they don't look at others.
Yeah.
Because it's finance, it is marketing. Most importantly today in my experience is people management. The challenges are there. So I think this is a message I would like to give, and I think India is a great place today. Next 10-20 years, I think India, especially manufacturing, is going to do very well in this country. So definitely this is the right time to be an entrepreneur in this country.
So, sir, would you like to share a small story from your experience or anything that was challenging or funny or something that we'd all like to hear?
A lot of incidents are there. Let me talk about one in the education sector and one in the industry sector. Okay. So, Bhimavaram, as you know, is a small town, rural area. And Narsapur also, where our big campus is there, is quite far away from the city. And after my grandfather passed away in 2002, I started looking into these two campuses. So I dream quite a lot. So I used to always dream, okay, Narsapur I have to cross a forest and go. Bhimavaram is where I have to take a train and go there. These are all away from a city. But both colleges are doing extremely well. So I used to think, why can't I have a campus in Hyderabad city? And but today to set up a campus in Hyderabad is going to be very difficult to acquire land and all that. So this was in the year 2006 or maybe 7, I think. So through a friend of mine, I came to know that one small school was for sale in Bachpalli. And that was a time when the Telangana movement was quite severe and people were skeptical about land prices crashing and all that. I was totally oblivious to that because my focus was I wanted to start something in the city. So went there and I bought that school property. In my own organization, everyone was opposing it. Why are you going to Bachpalli? Why here? Hyderabad is going to crash. But my intention was not real estate. My intention was very clear. I wanted to have a campus in the city. Then it was a small bit of property. Then later on, in 2011, again when the market really tanked, it was a coincidence. It was not that I planned like that. Then the land at the behind that also came for sale and we acquired it. And then I said, okay, the dream of starting a college in Hyderabad now will come true because land is what is important. And then we started, and since it was a smaller campus, and I said, let's do a women's college there. Again, a lot of people criticized me. In fact, when the college was being inspected by the authorities who give the permissions, the main sanctioning authority said that, are you crazy to start a college here? A lot of colleges are closing down. Why are you starting this such a prime area? You do a mall or you do a housing project. I said, no, I'm not in the real estate business. I want to, the objective was clear. Then people started saying the Vastu is bad and that is good. So all sorts of things were going on. These are all well-wishers. But despite all that, went ahead, and then today that college has become probably in the top 5 or 6 in the state within 10 years. So it gives a lot of satisfaction when you see all these girls studying well, getting good jobs and all that. So that was one thing. And second again was maybe the cement plant itself. When so many people went and said it's not viable.
Yeah.
And my own friends in the industry, the colleagues said this fellow is going to go. A lot of things, they said that it will not produce more than 500 tons of cement. The people started saying that your limestone mines are far away. Yes, it was far away. Some people went to the extent of saying that once Polichandra Dam is built, the factory will get submerged. So, a lot of rumors. And but we overcame all that, and it's become a good thing. So, these are all, sometimes in the evening we sit and discuss all these things.
So, sir, you think it's right time, right place, or is it something that you've thought of, you envisioned, and you were like, okay, I have to do this?
Actually, Meghna, I think I didn't think too much. I think one great thing I learned from my grandfather is to have a flexible mindset. Otherwise, I don't know anything about printing, and cement came because it was recommended by someone to go and have a look at it. It's not that I went for it.
No.
And in fact, at one stage when I was putting a bid in the bank, someone whom I knew very closely in the cement industry had also put a bid, and then he requested me, why don't you withdraw? I actually withdrew. But then the original promoter said, no, I want to give it to you only. So again, I came back to the picture. So nothing was planned, nothing was targeted. It just happened. So if you have that mindset, but whatever you get, do it properly, I think you'll be happy with that. I also firmly believe in the power of intention. So if you have an intention, I think ultimately you can do it.
So, sir, now you're carrying forward your grandfather's legacy, and I know that your kids are also carrying the same legacy forward. So what is something that you were taught or your grandfather taught you that is also being passed down to the next generation?
Yeah, so I think what I learned from my grandfather is the value of hard work and being humble, and then treat people properly. I think probably both my sons Aditya and Sumant have done it better than me also. And fortunately, see, both of them studied well. They picked up the branches or the disciplines they wanted. It's not that we told them to do something. They worked outside, abroad, in whichever areas they wanted, and they came back. Both my daughter-in-laws also are well educated, good support. So I think they'll definitely continue the legacy there.
So, sir, do you have any advice for the next generation entrepreneurs who are going to take the Indian businesses to the next level?
I don't think I can give advice, but I can only share some of my experiences, and maybe that will motivate them. I think you should be grounded today. That is what I see lacking in many. We have all these big plans and may not be practical. Treat your employees well. Okay, follow your passion. Don't lose it. And one important thing which I've seen a lot of people don't give much attention is to have a feedback mechanism. That's one thing which I always follow, because you might think you're doing something good, or this is the right thing, but you need to take a break once in a while and get the feedback. Is it going in the right direction or not?
Taking the criticism constructively,
yes,
and not defending yourself in those situations, I think is definitely important.
And don't take shortcuts. Because today everyone wants to make money overnight. And if you have a long-term view and you build up the business, money will automatically follow.
Yeah. Great. Is there anything else, sir, that you would like to discuss? Or
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you for having me here. I think it was a nice discussion.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. We've learned so much from you today. I would definitely want to know more about the education and the other businesses also. But I think we've got a very good idea of what goes on in the cement and the ceramics industry. So it was truly a pleasure having you today on our podcast, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you.